My name is Mr. Morgan and I'm in charge of film studies. I'm here today to just talk to you briefly about GCSE film studies. Now on the screen you can see quite a few of the jobs in the film industry that film studies could lead towards, and I'm sure you've all sat in a cinema or at home and watched how many names there are at the end of films and seen how many people contribute to the making of films. GCSE film studies is a really good way into knowing what some of these jobs are, giving you a bit of experience at some of these, and developing your skills in these areas to see which one you might want to pursue at A-level film studies or further. Now, on the screen, there's a list of things that I think you should ask of yourselves if you're considering choosing GCSE film studies, because these are the skills that would be really useful if you were to take it. So in GCSE film studies, it's important that you like both creative and analytical work. Okay, so it's like this combination between analysis, or something that you might do in English, where you're looking at how an author works, but here you're looking at how a filmmaker works, thinking about the techniques they use, thinking about the meanings and the themes, but also a little bit like IT or art or photography, where you're going to be putting those techniques into practice through making short films and screenplays. It's really good if you enjoy coming up with stories ideas and you enjoy creative writing. That's a really big piece of film studies, especially for your coursework. We do work with some computers, we do use editing software, and we do use HD cameras. We have 6 HD cameras in the subject that you can use. But it is also important that you're okay with writing. There is quite a bit of writing in the course, and you're ultimately assessed on writing in your exams, which I'll come to in a second. If you're interested in the history of films, where films came from, the history of Hollywood, films that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily go to the cinema to see or put on Netflix, but would broaden your understanding of film. It's also important that you're independent worker and that you can be trusted, because there'll be a lot of small group-based projects where you can go out and be getting on with creating short films that you'll show to the class. Now on the screen now, we've got the 6 films that you will study for your GCSEs. Now we will watch parts of films throughout the 2-year GCSE, but these 6 films that are on the screen right now, 3 and then 3 on the following slide, these are the films that you'll be examined on, okay? And you'll see that they represent quite a mix. So Let the Right One In is a horror film from the horror genre, and it's a non-English language film. It's a Swedish film, so it's subtitled horror. And we're talking about the horror genre, and you'll be studying that film and answering some questions in an exam about that film. An Education is an English film. It's a drama film about a young lady who goes to school and falls in love with someone who perhaps she shouldn't have fallen in love with. And we look at that one and we think about representation, and we think about the way the story is put together, or what we call the narrative, the way that's been written. Submarine on the right-hand side is a film by Richard Ayoade. It's a British film, and it's a more contemporary film that we study. And we look at how Richard Ayoade uses something called aesthetics, so the visual of film, to tell his story. The next 3 films include a couple of classics from classic Hollywood and new Hollywood. So classic Hollywood, Singing in the Rain, a musical, compared to Grease, which is a new Hollywood musical. And we'll be talking about those films to do with the history of filmmaking, how Hollywood began, how Hollywood changed, and the institutions. And we'll also be comparing those, because in your exam, your biggest unit is on a comparison between new and classic Hollywood, looking at those 2 films. And then lastly, Whiplash, an American independent film about a drummer in a jazz band. And we'll be looking at that from a critical writing point of view. You will study a piece of writing about Whiplash, and in the exam you will be asked to talk about how far you agree with that critical piece of writing or not. Now there's quite a few questions that always get asked of me, so I'm just going to go through a few of those now about the content of GCSE film studies. It's really important to understand that it's not just a subject where you sit back, watch films every lesson and get a GCSE at the end of it. Of course, we watch quite a lot of sequences of films and clips from films, and we watch those 6 feature films as a minimum throughout the 2 years, but not every lesson, or nearly every lesson, is just doing that. There's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of writing going on, thinking about the way films are crafted. So we only watch 6 feature films minimum, We may watch a couple more, but predominantly we're watching little clips and sections of films to demonstrate how it's been made and what the techniques are. Equally, what's important is some of the films that you may enjoy or think that you would like to go to the cinema to watch, we don't necessarily study in GCSE. So we don't study films like Fast and the Furious or those big mainstream films. We study the 6 films that you have just seen and other clips from other films which are really useful to show you some of the techniques. Another thing a lot of people ask is, do you need to star or act in film studies in the films we make? No, you don't. You are not assessed and you'll never be forced to act in our films. So if that's something that you're not a big fan of, then you don't have to do that. You don't need to worry. But equally, some people love drama and love to be a part of filming and acting. And if you do like to act and would like to be in the films, then of course you can. The option is there. You're not forced to, but the option's there. So people that choose drama can sometimes choose film studies and do really well because they like that side of it. People that don't necessarily like drama, you do not have to be in front of the camera. We do a lot of writing about films, and I think sometimes people have a misconception about how much writing there is. So you do need to understand that your 2 exams in film studies are an hour and a half each at the end of year 11, and they are all written exams. Equally, your coursework will be a screenplay and an analysis of your screenplay, which is written. So 100% of your GCSE in film studies is based on written work. It's just really important you get that. And the written work is closest to something that you would do in English. So think about English where you're studying books and novels and poems. That is the biggest similarity I can give you. But rather than talking about books, novels, and poems, you're talking about films. So as I said, there are 2 exams, which is 70% of your GCSE, both sat at the end of year 11 on 6 films, 3 films in one exam, 3 films in the other exam. And your attitude to writing needs to be good, but you don't need to be the greatest writer in the world. It's really about the attitude and understanding. I just want you to know that that is part of the course. Now, if there's any questions or anything that you think I haven't clarified about it, then please send me an email on this address and I will get back to you. I'll be present at all of the option evenings, whether they're virtual or in person. Please book an appointment and come and ask me questions. Ask anything that you think. There's no silly questions, so please feel free to ask. But if not, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in GCSE Film Studies.